Hi, I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summerall. And after just 2 weeks of the season, only 5 of the 26 teams have won both of their games. And the only Western team with a perfect record, Tom, the Los Angeles Rams.
Wow, they shut out Atlanta 31-0.
You saw them the week before against Kansas City. Were you that impressed?
Well, you know, their offensive line is solid and grades out 100%, but that young defense, particularly the 3 young linebackers, they're really playing super for Chuck Knox. They're really a good team.
They've got a young runner that I haven't heard too much about, perhaps a new name to a lot of people, McCutcheon.
He gets a 4.4 40, but he's also running with Bertelsen. Very, very fine backfield, those two, yeah.
How about San Francisco, Denver? Were you surprised at all the points?
Well, I'm surprised the Broncos getting 34 points against a good San Francisco defense. Old Charlie Johnson must be playing.
They tell me that the Broncos are just about 2 players in a couple of key spots away from being a very, very fine football team. The Oakland Raiders finally finished Miami's winning streak.
Are you a little bit surprised at the Oakland defense? They must have done a great job against the Dolphins, no doubt.
I saw about 2 quarters of the game, and the 3 linebackers for Oakland were particularly impressive. That's a very, very solid defensive unit. And they're going to give a lot of people many problems before they're through.
Looks like George Blanda's going to play till he's about 80, right?
Does, doesn't it? What about our featured performance of the week, Tom?
In the NFC West, our outstanding performer is Merlin Olsen, the big earth mover, number 74.
Merlin now in his 12th year from Utah State, the Rams' first-round choice in 1962. This footage from last year, but this year's performance, if anything, has been better than he was last year.
You know, maybe that youth movement has helped Merlin because he's down to about 260 pounds and even more aggressive.
He, of course, the only one left now from the original fearsome foursome.
I don't have to identify number 19, but in the AFC West, it's John Unitas now playing for San Diego.
There are so many statistics about him that we really haven't got enough time to go through all of them. I guess the most significant one at the moment is the fact that he is nearing, Unitas is, 40,000 yards as a passer, and that's just staggering. In fact, he's just 2 yards short at the moment.
And almost 300 touchdown passes. John Unitas, an outstanding performer in almost any year.
You know, it occurs to me, Tom, that there may be some people who don't remember that he was drafted number 9 by Pittsburgh in '56 and then cut and signed as a free agent by the Colts.
What a grab. John Unitas. Joe Namath was back in Baltimore's Memorial Stadium last weekend, hoping for the kind of day he had there a year ago.
It was an uncharacteristically serious Joe Namath warming up last Sunday as the Jets prepared to take on the new name Colts. During their opening day loss to Green Bay, Namath had failed for the first time in 75 games to register any points. For game number 2, Joe wasn't making any predictions, but you can guarantee he hadn't forgotten the 496 yards he amassed in last year's Colts contest. From the start, it looked like the Jets were on the move as Namath fueled them on passes like this to number 83, Jerome Barkham, to the Colt 5-yard line. But when Stan White's hits went unchecked, for the 3rd time in 5 years, the winds of ill fortune blew over the Jets signal caller. This time, it was a separated shoulder, and it looks like Joe Willie might be cheated of yet another season. It figures to be an equally damaging blow to the Jets, who without number 12 aren't even remotely the same team. Joe's replacement will be number 18, Al Woodall, a 5-year veteran who spent most of last season on the offensive telephones, and on his first series, unfortunately, he looked it. Ubiquitous linebacker number 53, Stan White, was the main man again, and the Colts were on the go. Baltimore's superstar to be, Bert the Rifle Jones, opened up once again with some impressive salvos. This one good for 51 yards to wide receiver Glenn Doughty. Jones blasted another volley to Doughty, and the Colts had themselves a 10-3 lead over the disorganized Jets by halftime. Given the ball at midfield by the surprisingly opportunistic Jet defense, Al Woodall started to fill Joe Willie's shoes. His confidence got a big boost when he hit a smiling number 7, Eddie Bell, to tie it up at 10-all. Meanwhile, Burt Jones was experiencing severe growing pains at the hands of the Jets secondary. Dallas Howell's interception was number 4 of the day on young Burt, and he had to be figuring there must be a less humiliating way to become a top quarterback. Al Woodall's flare-out pass to Emerson Boozer put the Colts in the hole 20-10. On the next series, the Colts brought in more seasoned quarterback Marty Domrese, and he quickly demonstrated that whatever Burt Jones had was contagious. Number 51, Ralph Baker, in his 10th year as the Jets' left linebacker, returned this theft 23 yards for his first 6-pointer. On the next series, Domrese turned to the other side of the Jets' 5-man nickel secondary, only to be stung again. Number 46, Rich Soles, had 3 pickoffs for the day as the New Yorkers hauled down a team record of 8. But despite their defensive heroics, the loss of Namath will haunt the Jets long after the sweetness of a 34-10 victory is forgotten.
Got to give the Jets credit for that win, Pat, but it's always a shame when a great player like Joe Namath is forced to the sidelines.
Here's hoping Joe has a speedy recovery. But you know, Tom, that game in Baltimore was really a story of 4 quarterbacks, while in Green Bay last week, another lesser-known quarterback had to come off the bench in the late going.
Green Bay fans have high hopes that this will be an even better year than last, especially after the way the Packers shut out Joe Namath on opening night. 6 days later, Detroit's Greg Landry on the game's first play from scrimmage again tested the Green Bay pass defense. And again, Ken Ellis was the hero as he came up with the first of 3 Packer interceptions. Green Bay's Scott Hunter did not have an easy day either. Most of the Packers' yardage was due to 22 typically rugged thrusts by John Brockington, whose 118 yards rushing totaled more than all the Lion runners combined. Brockington's running mate in the Green Bay Bull Elephant backfield is MacArthur Lane, number 36, who burst for the flag in Green Bay's only touchdown. The Packers led until well into the 4th quarter when Greg Landry was finally able to avoid an interception long enough to put the Lions in scoring position. With 4.5 minutes left, Alty Taylor scored, and the Lions were ahead for the first time in the game, 13-10. But then a strange thing happened. With less than 2 minutes left, number 12, Jim Delgado, entered his first game as a Green Bay Packer quarterback. Barry Smith was on the receiving end of Delgado's first completion, but the Detroit defense was not about to be upstaged. Then came the game's key play. A minute and a half left, 4th down and 23 to go from his own 38. Everyone in Lambeau Field knew exactly what Jim Delgado had to do. The clutch catch by Johnny Staggers gave Jim Delgado all the time and operating room he really needed. One more completion to Barry Smith, plus a roughing penalty, set up Chester Marco for the all-important tying field goal. Marco's kick was good, but after the game, the name they were repeating in Green Bay was Delgado.
While the Packers and the Lions were battling to a low-scoring tie, the Minnesota Vikings and the Chicago Bears were flexing their defensive muscles.
On a day that was near perfect for almost any sport, the Minnesota Vikings were in Chicago looking for their second win of the young season. These knees belong to defensive captain Dick Butkus, number 51. As long as Butkus remains healthy, the Bears' defense stays solid. The Vikings found out just how solid the Bears' defense was early last Sunday. The powerful Chicago front wall buried Viking quarterback Fran Tarkenton 7 times during the afternoon. While the Bear defense shut off the Viking offense early, the Chicago offense found first quarter success. Bear quarterback Bobby Douglas relied on running back Carl Garrett to take Chicago in close. A 1-yard Douglas keeper and a Mac Percival field goal gave the Bears a 10-0 lead. Minnesota countered with a defense of their own. The Purple Gang often handled Chicago before the play could even get untracked. Meanwhile, like a swarm of bees, the Minnesota offense started stinging the powerful Bears on defense. Tarkenton started the attack in the air. Number 42, John Gilliam, stung Bears cornerback Charlie Ford for 50 yards. When the drive stalled, Fred Cox put the first of 5 field goals he would have for the afternoon, this one good from 41 yards out. With less than a minute remaining in the half, the Vikings rallied on the legs of super rookie Chuck Foreman. Finding the yardage a little harder to come by, Tarkenton slipped a spiral by the Bears to knot the score. Leading 16-10 in the fourth quarter, the Vikes called on Foreman for ball control. Number 44 rolled for 116 yards for the afternoon, confirming reports that the Vikings have a genuine breakaway threat. While the offense chipped away, the Viking defense remained brutal. Paul Krause's fumble return set up a 4th Minnesota field goal. Then Tarkenton moved the Vikings out of reach late in the fourth quarter. Ex-Packer star Carroll Dale's 40-yard reception set up Fred Cox's final field goal and his 1,000th point. The 22-13 loss put the Bears 0-2 for the season, while the Vikings remain unbeaten.
You know, Tom, the San Diego Chargers lost to the Washington Redskins on opening day as a result of an almost non-existent offense.
That's true, Pat, but last Sunday, Johnny Unitas rallied that Charger offense to meet the challenge of O.J. Simpson and the Buffalo Bills.
While many strange characters have come out of Southern California, the strangest yet may be the San Diego Chargers. Coming off an opening day embarrassment, San Diego needed a win. After they decided where they wanted to line up, the Chargers started to play some football. Buffalo's Spike Jones blasted a 47-yard punt, which speedster Ron Smith fielded at the 28. Willie McGee's key block sent Smith the final distance. Smith's 72-yard punt return gave the Chargers a 7-0 first quarter lead, and that was San Diego's first score of the season. The Bills managed to come back with O.J. Simpson leading the way. Simpson netted 103 yards on 22 carries for the afternoon. The league's leading rusher powered over from 9 yards out in the second period for Buffalo's only score. The San Diego defense shut down the Buffalo attack following the touchdown as constant pressure led to miscues. The Old Masters' soft touch rang up another 6 points to complete a near perfect. Holmes rounded the scoring for a 34-7 San Diego Charger victory.
Last week in Foxborough, the Kansas City Chiefs and the New England Patriots staged a show which was quite a bit short of being an artistic success, but still very interesting in a very unartistic way.
The New England Patriots are a very young team, a team which is ready and eager to pick up any mistakes the opposition may make. Unfortunately for the Patriots last week, their own mistakes killed them. For example, on 1st and goal from the Kansas City 1-yard line, a fumble destroyed a 70-yard drive. Mike Sensabaugh's recovery was crucial because New England again drove to the 1-yard line late in the game. But trailing by 10, Sam Cunningham's BAM was not quite enough to win the game. Almost, but not quite. For the rest of the game, the Kansas City defense had Jim Plunkett's number. As in the past, Jim Plunkett's pass pocket just would not hold up. And for Plunkett the runner, even the sidelines were not safe. In slow motion, it's easy to see why Jim Plunkett runs so often. It's also easy to see why it's preferable for a quarterback not to pretend that he's a fullback. Jim Plunkett was not the only guy with problems. Picture yourself trying to punt under these circumstances. Gerald Wilson somehow got off a 33-yarder, but the game's biggest plays were delivered by the old established firm of Dawson and Taylor. After sitting out the opener with an injured thumb on his throwing hand, Lynn Dawson proved he still has the touch, which made him the #1 passer on the all-time list. Otis Taylor proved that he too is human, although there are members of the New England defense who refuse to believe it, as Otis Taylor and the Chiefs sneaked past the young Patriots 10-7.
Well, Pat, last week in Berkeley, the Miami Dolphins learned the true meaning of the old saw, all things bounteous must sometime terminate.
But in defeat to the Raiders, the Dolphins still looked almost as good defensively as they had when winning. In fact, both teams played a whale of a defensive ball game.
The Miami Dolphins, led by coach Don Shula, were out to break a record by winning 19 straight games. But the largest crowd ever to witness a Raider football game, over 74,000, thought it was time for someone to bone the Dolphins. The only thing rarer than a Miami mistake is a Miami mistake made by Larry Zonka. The Raiders not only forced Larry to fumble, but recovered it and got the ball in close enough for the ageless one, George Blanda, to boot his first of 4 field goals. It seemed that General Manager Sid Gilman spent so many hours on the telephone last summer that it became a permanent appendage attached to his ear, Pat.
Well, his trade seemed to have paid off, Tom, and no one was more aware than the Cincinnati Bengals after the opening kickoff last Sunday.
One of Sid Gilman's last trades brought Bob Gresham, number 36, from the New Orleans Saints, and Gresham burned the Bengals for 103 yards on the opening kickoff. When Gresham was acquired from New Orleans, he ran for over 150 yards in the first exhibition game he played in. Against Cincinnati, he displayed all the abilities of a first-rate NFL running back. Running behind a refurbished Oiler front wall, Gresham picked up 87 yards in but 12 carries, as Houston gave the Bengals a scare 4 quarters. Twice, mistakes denied quarterback Dan Pastorini coast-to-coast touchdowns. A motion penalty wiped out Ken "Double-O" Burroughs' 80-yard touchdown strut. Then, offsides canceled Pastorini's 60-yard heave to tight end Mac Alston. With 14 points lost, the Houston defense spent most of the game trying to cope with Essex Johnson, number 19, who at 5'9" is too small to tackle high. Johnson slithered for over 130 yards and a touchdown as Cincinnati finally wore down the grudging Oilers. Leading 17-10, quarterback Ken Anderson riveted his eyes on tight end Bob Trumpy. When Trumpy caught the pass, his eyes read only touchdown. "34 yards later, Trumpy scored, and the Bengals had won their first of the year, 24-10 over Houston.
Well, with Cincinnati now on the winning track, the two teams they must beat to win their division met in Pittsburgh last week, Tom.
Boy, you're right about that, Pat. And all those preseason reports on the Steelers' strength look pretty accurate. You can ask the Cleveland Browns.
In Pittsburgh, Three Rivers Stadium was packed with its usual assortment of fanatics as those bitterest of rivals, the Browns and Steelers, went head-to-head. From the opening kickoff to the final gun on this beautiful spring-like afternoon, a supposedly much improved Cleveland team knew nothing but frustration. One big reason for the improvement was to be number 34, rookie running back Greg Pruitt, who was playing in his first regular NFL game and looked it. Pruitt's botchery was matched only by Pittsburgh's as referee Tommy Bell ruled to play a touchback for Cleveland, not a touchdown for Pittsburgh. But it mattered little, for as everyone knows in Pittsburgh, the defense is pure gold, although L.C. Greenwood, number 68, may have gotten carried away with that assessment. Cleveland's running attack was completely shut off, and when Mike Phipps had time to throw, which was seldom, the steel curtain descended. Pittsburgh, who last year led the entire NFL in thefts, intercepted 3 passes for the second straight week. What's more, they kept intact their streak of holding the Browns without a single touchdown in all 4 games played in Three Rivers Stadium. The Steelers were almost as awesome on offense. Roy Girella kicked 4 field goals, and number 43, Frank Lewis, caught 2 touchdowns, the first from Terry Bradshaw, the second from Terry Hanratty, as last year's Central Division champions dominated the team they must beat to repeat, 33-6. If it seemed that head coach Chuck Noll was using great self-discipline and squelching a smile, it must be remembered these teams meet again in November. That will be in Cleveland, where the Steelers have been unable to win for the past 8 years.
2 weeks ago, the Atlanta Falcons scored 62 points in beating the Saints. Last week, I'm sure they wish they'd been able to keep some of those points in reserve for their game against the Rams.
In Los Angeles, the Rams trotted out their new colors to greet the visiting Atlanta Falcons. They also trotted out speedster Dick Gordon, number 5, on a double reverse that kept the Falcon defense running in circles. John Hadel had the Los Angeles offense well in hand and was pinpointing his passes. Harold Jackson, number 29, caught this one out of bounds, but made up for it soon thereafter, and the Rams were on the way. The Ram defense, led by number 90, Larry Brooks, was unreal and kept Falcon quarterback Dick Shiner under intense pressure. Shiner finally cracked. Dave Elmendorf, number 42, picked up the pieces and set the Rams up again. Jim Bertelsen gouged out a tough 4-yard score to make it 14-0. A David Ray field goal, a short Larry Smith touchdown, and this John Hadel pass to Jack Snow made the final score 31-0. But the accolades must go to the Rams defense, especially the front four, who allowed Atlanta only 2 first downs, 4 yards passing, a total offense of 70 yards, and who shut out a Ram opponent in the Coliseum for the first time in 27 years. Congratulations to the Rams front four.
The Rams breezed, Pat, but it was anything but a blowout for the 49ers last week.
One thing San Francisco found out, Tom, is that you can never let up against John Ralston's positive-thinking Denver Broncos.
Facing the 49ers, 2-time champions of the NFC West, the Denver Broncos could taste their second straight victory. Behind the key block of number 78, Marv Montgomery, Floyd Little set the tenor for the impending offensive barrage. Denver built a 13-0 lead on 2 Jim Turner field goals and Charlie Johnson's scoring strike to Jerry Simmons, number 80. Not wishing to let the game stray out of hand, John Brody isolated setback Jimmy Thomas on linebacker Bill Lasky and found him on a swing and up. After a Bruce Gossett field goal, Brody went for 6, but Gene Washington's diving catch was ruled incomplete. So Brody sent Thomas up the gut, and the score stood at 13-10. Brody burrowed down deep into his grab bag of tricks and tossed a lateral to flanker John Eisenbarger, who found tight end Ted Quellick floating free and easy. When Vic Washington blasted over from in close, the 49er lead had ballooned to 30-13 in the third quarter. John Ralston rallied his battle-weary troops, and his positive thoughts were translated into the old flea flicker that went from Johnson to Little to Anderson to Masters. Following a Bronco touchdown and a 49er field goal, Dick Nolan's team's lead evaporated to 33-20. Then it melted away to 33-27 when number 84 Gene Washington beat number 44 Bruce Taylor to the post. With just under 7 minutes to play, Ralston told his men that Taylor could be beaten to the post again. Charlie Johnson's pump fake froze Taylor, and Haven Moses beat him for 39 yards. From the 1, Taylor wanted a piece of Floyd Little, but Floyd wanted a touchdown more. just over 4 minutes to play, the Broncos' incredible comeback earned them a 34-33 lead. But the 49ers were a team toughened by many playoff games, and led by 38-year-old John Brody, they staggered off the ropes. Larry Schreiber's 31-yard catch and run set San Francisco up nicely. But then number 55, Pete Duranko, grabbed the first part of Vic Washington's equipment he could reach, and he got away with it. With 31 seconds left, Bruce Gossett lined up a 39-yard field goal. His kick was true, and San Francisco finally outlasted the upset-minded Broncos 36-34.
I've been surprised by a lot of teams and by a lot of games in my years in the NFL, but I've rarely been as shocked as I was last week at the outcome of the game between the Washington Redskins and the St. Louis Cardinals.
This is Busch Stadium, home of the St. Louis Cardinals and site of the upset of the year in the NFL. For last week, it was the Redskins who got ambushed as the Cardinals flew away with victory. In the beginning, quarterback Jim Hart faced a withering Redskin charge, but neatly and coolly avoided it, rifling the pass to number 44, Donnie Anderson. As Hart's protection improved, he split the seams in the Washington defense, and the Golden Palomino took it to the one from where he scored 2 plays later. Unshakable veterans that they are, the Redskins came whooping back. Billy Kilmer to Larry Brown was a big gainer that set up the tie as Cool Hand Bill, behind perfect protection, hit a streaking Charlie Taylor for a 23-yard score. The Redskins went ahead on a field goal, and then St. Louis should have folded. But Jim Hart hadn't read the script, and number 21 Terry Metcalf swivel-hipped the cards in close. Hart to number 24 Don Schei put St. Louis on the one, and Donnie Anderson put them ahead 14-10. Cardinal fans had begun to dare to hope. The sparks of hope were fanned to flame as Jim Hart led another drive on the Redskin goal. First, it was Metcalf. Then relentless accuracy to number 81 Jackie Smith, a tight end some call practically perfect. All of a sudden, it was Hart to a galloping Donnie Anderson again. It was the Cardinals by 24-10 and a most surprising turn of events. And so the Redskins went to number 9 Sonny Jurgensen, their own version of the cavalry. Sonny's arm was never better, and he arrowed number 31 Charlie Haraway to pull the Skins to within range, 24-17. But then what had been a good game became a great one, as number 24 Don Schei went coast to coast 97 yards. Schei's flashing feet made it 31-17 Cardinals halfway through the fourth quarter. Not to be outdone on the very next kickoff, the Redskins, Herb Mulkey, number 28, went 97 yards himself. And there's no question that the man is one midnight flyer and a game breaker. But last Sunday it was not to be. Jim Hart and the Cardinals were cool to the very end when they drove to add a field goal, which put 34 points on the board for them. For the stunned Redskins and Sonny Jurgensen, it was a war party they had never expected to meet. And their 27 points, which would have won for them normally, was the low side of one of the year's best games to date.
You know, Tom, last week's final game at Yankee Stadium stirred up a lot of memories for me.
Both of us, I guess. I'm sure you would have preferred your old team bidding farewell with a win, Pat, but the Philadelphia Eagles had something to say about that.
In the football finale for Yankee Stadium, New York's unbeaten Giants ran headlong into a Philadelphia Eagle team led by rejuvenated Roman Gabriel. Philly's strategy was to pass medium and long against New York's young secondary, and it worked all day long as Gabe consistently picked apart the Giant zone. New York's Rat Pack offense pulled off some long gains also, particularly by Ron Johnson, who ran for well over 100 yards. Leading by 4 points with less than 4 minutes remaining, things looked good for New York. But in a 3rd and 21 situation, Roman Gabriel pierced to prevent defense, and rookie tight end Charlie Young pulled the Eagles out of the hole. Gabriel worked the 2-minute drill to perfection, going to huge Harold Carmichael on 3 consecutive passes. On the last one, the 6'8" receiver outjumped Willie Williams in the end zone, and the Eagles led 23-20 with only over a minute left in the game. It appeared certain the jubilant Eagles had avenged the 62-10 humiliation of last season. But former Eagle Norm Snead frantically passed his Giants downfield against the clock. With time running out, New York's field goal unit rushed on the field for a final try from the 14 to snatch victory from the Eagles. Pete Gogolak's tying kick had not only ended a bruising battle between 2 longtime rivals, but it had put the final punctuation mark to an era of great football games at Yankee Stadium.
Well, Pat, what about the picks for this week?
Seems like I'm picking up right where I left off last year. I'm 3-4 after 1 week, and you are 4-3.
How sweet it is.
But I got a chance to get even again with some tough games in the West this week. Los Angeles at San Francisco.
I think the Rams can win that, but I think John Hadle may have to throw more than he has in the first 2 wins for Los Angeles.
Charlie Johnson certainly did a good job against that supposedly tough San Francisco defense last week. The 49ers have had a tough time with the Rams in recent years, no matter where the game is. This one, as we said, is at San Francisco. But I got to agree with you. I'll go with Los Angeles.
Okay, what about Oakland against Kansas City? There's a brawl.
That's always a brawl. This one's at Kansas City. The Raiders looked awfully good last week against Miami and ending their streak. Kansas City, I guess, Tom, might be thinking about possibly getting old.
And you know they're doing it early. It might be a long November and December in Kansas City. I've got to go with the Oakland Raiders, too.
Especially that age factor will tell if they do start to lose a little bit. That's the time that you start looking for a place to lie down somewhere. I'll go with Oakland, too. Atlanta at Detroit. What do you think? I'm
going to go with Van Brocklin to have the Falcons ready to play a real good game, but they've got to worry about, I think, one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in football, Landry.
Greg Landry's had a good year so far. This game is at Detroit, and for that reason, I'll go with the Lions. At any rate, we'll be back next week to show you what happens. I'm Pat Summerall.
And I'm Tom Brookshire, and we'll see you next week.